You're listening to Free Mama Radio, where we believe you can have both a successful business and show up as the mom you want to be. I'm your host, Lauren Golden, a mom who built a full-time income working part-time hours. Now, I help other moms like you learn how to work from home on your own terms, take control of your schedule, and make more money so you can live a totally awesome, guilt-free life. I am on a mission to make sure that no mother has to choose between family and financial stability. So if you've been wondering, can I really have it all? This podcast will give you the answers. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Free Mama Radio. I'm so excited to be here with the amazing Lisa Johnson. Lisa is a multi-seven-figure business coach specializing in helping entrepreneurs scale their businesses using passive income from memberships and courses. I'm super excited to dive into this because I think passive income is a word that gets thrown around a ton. So I'm excited to dive into that. After a tough childhood spent in social housing, Lisa went on to have successful careers in law, banking, and the entertainment industry. Her background in overcoming obstacles has helped her mold her into a bold, straight-talking coach. We have this in common, we talked about earlier, who is never afraid to be an authentic and outspoken truth teller. She's a huge believer that anyone can become a success no matter their background, and is known for her anti-bullying campaigning online. I know you've got twin kiddos, so she's a mom as well. She was a speaker at this year's Free Mama Live. She is my copywriter's business coach. She is just an amazing person. I'm so excited to have her here. Lisa, welcome to Free Mama Radio.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So some of our listeners got to meet you back in October, but for people who don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself. We heard in your bio some of your background, but really take us from like point A to point B.
Oh, crikey. I don't think you want to go to point A. That's a long time ago. But how things kind of got started for me. I mean, first and foremost, I'm a mum. And that's the why, the reason that I do everything. And so how it all started for me was because of them. I was working in banking and doing quite well, like climbing the ladder, after a tough start where I didn't really have much opportunity to be able to get into the kind of life that I would have wanted, because I come from a quite tough council estate background in Lincolnshire. And so for me, it was all about seeing where I could get to. And so I'd done pretty well to get into like banking and a risk analyst, which I didn't know anybody that did that kind of thing growing up. So it seemed like I'd done really well. And then unexpectedly, I got pregnant with twins. And, like kids were not really part of the agenda. It was, okay, I'm going to have a baby. Oh no, I'm going to have two babies. And I was going through a divorce at the time. And so it was kind of tough. But I realized then that as a single parent, there was absolutely no way that I was going to be able to kind of go into work at 6 o'clock in the morning and leave work at 10 o'clock at night, which is exactly what I had been doing. My career had been everything. And so that wasn't going to be able to happen. I did con myself a little bit at the beginning by thinking that, well, yeah, I'll just have the babies. They'll fit into my life. I'll go back to work exactly how it was before. And then they were 5 months old when I went back to work. And I realized very quickly, like, that was not going to happen. And so the only thing that I could do at that point was go and get a job, like near my house, just so that I could at least see them when they got up in the morning and like when they went to bed. And so as soon as I did that, I realized there weren't very many jobs near where I lived. And so I had to go back to being a PA, which was the first thing that I ever was, is how I got started. And so I took on this PA role for a third of the salary that I had been on, and very quickly got bored. I was playing on the internet a lot of the time during the day. I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start a business. I didn't know anything about business, not the first thing. And so started this business as a wedding planner because I was quite good at organisation, as PAs are, and doing budgets and that kind of thing. So I thought, you know what? I like a party. I like cake. I'll become a wedding planner.
That was actually my first side gig too.
Was it? That's so funny. Because it seems glamorous, doesn't it? When you're looking from the outside in.
For me, I got married, and therefore I knew everything about the I'm like, well, I did it for me. Can't I do it for everyone? Clearly.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it, what we think? And then I did get 13 full planning weddings that year, so that was pretty good. But when we at the end of that year, like added up how much money I'd made in this side gig, and it was less than like transferring it into dollars, like $1.30 an hour, which I was never going to be able to leave my 9 to 5 on. It just wasn't going to happen. And so I knew that something had to change. I didn't really know what. I was 30,000 in debt by this point because I was bringing up twins. And so I had to think, right, and I had a new boyfriend by this stage. And it was like, what am I going to do? And it was either give up on my dreams and just know that you're going to be a PA and a mum. And they're the things you're going to be. And you're always going to be a little bit in debt. And you're always going to be living paycheck to paycheck. Or put some more money into it and get a business coach to teach you the business basics that you really should know before you even start a business. And so for me, if you're 30 in debt, you may as well be 35 in debt. And so I just stuck some money on a credit card and vowed to make it non-negotiable. Over a 3-month period, my coach taught me everything about like even little things like having an ideal client rather than just selling to everybody, and money mindset. I had a really poor money mindset because of my youth. And so after that happened, I turned the business around. It took about 4 months till I got my first ideal client. We really wanted cool brides who wanted to get married in Shoreditch, like wearing their DMs. They didn't want a proper wedding. They wanted to get married in a warehouse. They wanted a big party. And suddenly I got this client. She worked for Facebook and he worked for Google. And it was like, you are perfect clients. They had this huge budget. And 3 months later, we'd fully booked for a year and a half with ideal clients just like that. Just by doing this basic business work that I had completely overlooked, these foundations. And so suddenly we became the biggest UK urban wedding planning company. And that's how I got started. And it wasn't until kind of like 2 years, 3 years later, I'd become one of those self-development people that read every book. And, when you love learning, you just go into everything. And people started asking me, how did you do this? How did you do that? And I seemed to have a knack for explaining to people how to do things without the jargon. And so all the people I was suddenly giving advice to were suddenly making a lot more money. And it occurred to me that actually this is what you are loving doing, is teaching these people how to make money. And so I, 3.5 years ago, started Lisa Johnson Coaching. I gave the wedding business away. I was going to sell it. I couldn't find the right person. They all just cared about the money. And I loved that business. It was my baby. I wanted somebody to have it that really wanted it. So we did a competition and we gave it away to somebody that financially would not be able to afford a business. And I started Lisa Johnson Coaching. And within the first 6 months, it just went stratospheric very quickly. Within the first year, we were into the million. And then after that, I realized that actually what I'd done is I'd started a business that was making me work from 6 o'clock in the morning till 11 o'clock at night again. And that isn't really what I wanted. I wanted to spend time with my kids. And although it looked really successful from the outside with all this money and, all this traveling the world, that isn't what I wanted. I wanted a business where I could actually have time. And so that's when I started looking at the whole passive income stuff and adding in passive income streams into my business. And very quickly, over the last 18 months, things have changed massively. And now I work minimal hours, 4 days a week, and travel all over the place and make triple what I was making before.
I have so many things written down that I want to follow up with you on. I love that. I learned so much about you that I had not already heard before. So it's interesting that you said that people just kind of started asking you questions and that you had a really good way of, kind of answering them without getting all caught up in the jargon. And I think that is one of the answers to this question that I wrote down. But something I've wondered about you since the first time I ever heard you speak, Lisa, is what is it that you think makes you successful?
I think that it's one thing. I think that I don't pretend to be anything that I'm not. I think it's as simple as that. Because if you just stay yourself and don't try and curate your feed or curate everything about you so that the outside world thinks of you as this hugely successful person, just show who you really are, be raw and real, then what generally happens is people realize that if I can, people tell me all the time, I looked at you, Lisa, and I thought, if you could, I definitely could, which sounds weird, but actually I love that because I'm just a really normal person and money doesn't change that about you. It doesn't make you any different. I'm exactly the same as I was 3 years ago with some money. That is the only difference.
I tell people, I said this on an interview yesterday, one of the best compliments I've ever been given is, pre-COVID, I did lots of in-person events because I love community. I love people. And one of the best compliments I ever get is when people meet me in real life and they're like, oh my gosh, you're exactly the same as you are online. And I'm like,
yeah.
There's
no reason not to be.
Such a compliment, whether that is a positive or negative thing that they meant.
I think it's a positive. I think it's amazing when people say that about you, because the thing is, we can all, if we want to, curate a feed where we only show the highlights. We only show the perfect things that happen in business. But actually, the people that are really successful are the ones that don't mind sharing what went wrong, because the things that go wrong teach other people what not to do. And if we're here to help people learn, we need to be able to be vulnerable enough to go, do you know what? This is how I messed up this week. Don't do this. And that's where the real learning is.
I love that. So I've got a question for you that I'm guessing some of our listeners are wondering right now. If you're successful because you show who you really are, how does someone who's brand new to business show who they really are, but not get walls thrown down of like, but you don't have experience or you're brand new? Like, what's that balance between being really, I hate to authentic is kind of overused, but being very consistent and very real and raw, but also positioning themselves as someone, with experience and authority when they are actually new to business? What's that balance?
I think how I've always thought of the balance is you can only teach or help people with what you know. And you might only know something that is 6 months ahead of where somebody else is. But I remember when I started, if somebody could have told me how to skip that first 6 months and get set up, as a self-employed person and sort out my social media, I would have paid them money for that. So, don't try and over-egg what you know. That's the people that we don't trust online, and the people shouting about, I've made 6 figures in a day. Like, those kind of things don't ring true to us because it's not real. You're only showing one side of things. But I always thought, if I just go on and say, this is the things that went wrong how I started, if we're honest about it, is I started a Facebook group and I went on live every day and I said, people in wedding businesses, these are the things that I've done wrong in the last couple of years. Like, these are the things that went wrong. This is how I fixed them. This is something that happened to me with my first client. This is what I did about it. This is what I wish I'd done about it. And I just basically taught them the bits that I did do well. I did try and help with things I'd learned that I didn't do so well, but it made me become the expert in somebody that had had a wedding business for 3 years. And we're all an expert on something. It might not be, a lot of what I teach at the moment is things like memberships and courses. And when you talk to people about what kind of memberships or courses they can have, people often think that they have to be this guru, these big people we see online with huge presences, but actually they all started from somewhere. They all had to get their first client in. They all had to get their first person in a Facebook group. So whatever it is that your knowledge is on, whether that's potty training or, like helping women get better careers or, mindset or whatever else it is, writing, whatever, you start with what you know. And then your followers, the people that are your clients, they will go on the journey with you. So when you get more experience, they come with you and then they'll want to know what you're doing next. And, it carries on and on like that. But you can definitely be completely, I also hate the word authentic, but completely in integrity by, not exaggerating what you know and still have so much to offer.
You have so many followers these days as your business has grown and you have these memberships and people learning from you. And I know from my own community that comes with some responsibility as well. You mentioned that you love to read and that you're a personal development junkie, which I think is probably why people do still want to follow you because you're trying and doing new things. Do you have some book recommendations for us, or what are some of the most impactful either books you've read or things that you listen to that help you continue to grow?
Yeah, book-wise, there is a particular book that changed how I think about audiences that is brilliant by Pat Flynn. It's called Superfans. And if you're growing an online audience of any kind, you need to read it. It's really good. Also, Seth Godin's This Is Marketing is like a cornerstone book for me, like when I need to know what to do. Those kind of books really help me when it comes to anything about marketing or growing audiences. Because I think the hardest bit when we start up in business is finding our first few clients and like growing an audience. It's really hard. Like, people make it seem easy and it isn't. It took me 5 months to build an audience of anyone that would listen to me. And it does take time, but it also takes massive consistency. And we're in this world now where we see online people seem to do things overnight. And so Whereas a few years back, our parents might have said, if we break even in our business in year 3, then we're doing okay. Now, if we don't make 100 grand in the first 3 months, we feel like we've failed, which is ridiculous. So it takes time to do things. It takes patience to have a business, but it takes showing up consistently. And so if you're willing to do that, to show up even when it's a bit harder, to show up when you think no one's listening. I remember being in that Facebook group in the early days, even in the second, third month, and knowing it was just my mum and a couple of my friends in there.
There.
Yeah, we all started in the same place. People think that you still sometimes feel that way.
Well, I was going to say, I still have those videos up, and anytime I'm talking to someone who's going and I will literally say, please go watch when I started. Please go look at how awkward. And they were some of them were 5 minutes, and I thought I was going to die. I'm like, how can I talk for 5 minutes to
minutes? I know.
It's painful.
But even now, when I start something new, it's the same. If I start something completely new with a completely new audience, I still feel that. I still feel that pain. I still remember what it's like. And it doesn't matter because we all start with one. We're all in the same boat. And I think if people realized that and they didn't think you suddenly got these audiences overnight by putting loads of money in Facebook ads, I didn't use Facebook ads until I was at 7 figures. You don't need to. And I think people would give it more of a go and would be more consistent. But I think we've skewed it. It's probably our own faults on social media by making it look easier than it is. So now I'm on a mission to tell people how hard sometimes it is and that they can still get through it.
So everybody listening is trying to build a business because they want what you had when you became a mom. They want both, so to speak. They want to be able to be present when they want to be present and be able to travel, like you said, but they also want or have to have some sort of an income. What have you learned about that? You mentioned 3 years ago that you were doing really great in business, but you had kind of sold all your time off again. Yeah. What's that balance look like for you now? How have you navigated kind of your happy spot?
Yeah, I think that passive income massively has helped me. And when I talk about passive income, I don't mean the myth of just going to sleep and the money falling down on your head, because that's not a thing. But I mean charging for things where people give you recurring revenue, like monthly payments for something you've already built, like a course or membership or workshop or whatever, something one-to-many. And that's made things easier because for me, let's not pretend that there's any such thing as a work-life balance. If you're looking for that, you're going to be looking forever. It doesn't matter if you work 10 hours a day, you will always think in your head, 10 hours a month, you will always think in your head, I probably should work more. I'm sure there's more I could do. And if you work all the hours in your business, you are always going to think, oh, why am I doing this? My whole reason for doing it was the kids and now I'm not with them. So you're never going to feel like there's a balance. You're always going to be one way or the other. And I think that the real message is to get rid of that expectation, because it's only our own expectations that make us feel unhappy. If we give ourselves a more realistic expectation of what life could be like, then we can live up to that and therefore we will be happy because of it. So just, I work less. Yes, I work around 30 hours a month now and I make the income that I want to, but it wasn't like that at the beginning. At the beginning, I had a 9-to-5 job that I was working at the same time as growing a business. So I was doing 5 to 6 in the morning before the babies woke up. Then I was doing lunch hour in my 9-to-5 job. And then I was doing 10 till 11 o'clock at night on the business. So they were the only hours I could spend. And there was no point beating myself up about that. If they were the only hours I had, they were the hours I had. But I was going to make sure that in those hours, I was only going to do things that was going to get me nearer to my goal of giving up my 9-to-5.
I am podcast manager, go back, replay that again. That was so good. That's exactly, Lisa, where so many people listening are right now, where they're like, okay, I know there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but when I'm in it, it feels hard, right? I'm tired. Yeah. I'm exhausted. I'm a little overwhelmed. So I'm so glad that you just spoke to that. Now, you mentioned that you've got something that people can download. It's 6 months of Facebook Live prompts. Why would somebody want to go download this from you? How is this going to help them? You mentioned the word consistency earlier.
That's why.
Yes. How is this going to help them grow their business?
Yeah, I think it's really important, especially at the beginning when your audience don't know you very well, that they hear from you over and over again. We used to have this statistic, which was, an audience has to see you. Someone has to see you 7 times before they'll buy from you to gain that know, like, and trust factor that we always hear about. Actually, that's now 27 because social media is so busy that it's made people need to, binge watch people. They can only do that if you're on all the time. Now, I know how hard it is when you're trying to be consistent to think of new things to say, especially before you get used to linking your life to lessons that you can tell your followers online. But you still need to show up. It doesn't mean that you have to show up with some big rocket science thing every day. People just need to see you and your personality. That's much more important than what you know at the beginning. And so I put together this, it was actually me and my membership put it together. I asked them all to think of one thing that they have watched somewhere that they really enjoyed watching someone talk about on a Facebook Live.
That's
and
sourcing, by the way.
And they did.
Steal that one. That is genius.
So they all gave me something that they loved, and we put it together into a big book. And now every single day, weekday for 6 months, there is something that you can go, right, this is what I'll talk about today, that will show people your personality and what you know about and what you believe in. Because people don't generally buy from people because they're the most knowledgeable. They buy from people because they believe in that person and what they stand for and what they create. That's much more important, like who you are. And yet people are so scared to show who they really are to their audiences. And once you start doing that, once you realize that you can be vulnerable, you won't just have an audience, you will have a loyal audience, and that's worth so much more.
Oh, that's so good. Okay. I'm all about the takeaway. I'm all about like implementation. We can listen to these podcasts and read these books you recommended, but if we don't do something about it, we're going to be just standing right where we are a year from now. So it's Christmas week. We're almost to 2021. What are 3 tips that these ladies who are listening today, what are 3 action items that they can do to have a strong start to the new year inside of their business?
Yeah. So I think one thing that you definitely need to do is decide on a strategy for 2021. Now, that doesn't have to be some long document where you're writing all this mumbo jumbo that you'd normally give to a bank to get a loan. This is you deciding what actions you're going to take every single month next year to make sure you're moving forward. That could be, I'm going to pitch to a magazine for an article every single month. It could be, I'm going to put a funnel together, or at least learn what a funnel is so I can start growing an audience. All of those kind of things. The second thing you should really do is vow that you're going to be consistent in one place. Don't worry about all the places. I know that there's now like TikTok and all these other things popping up and reels and everything. It doesn't matter. You only need to be consistent in one place. Mine was Facebook. That's it. It wasn't even the whole of Facebook. It didn't even have a page. It was a Facebook group. Just be consistent in one place. If it's too overwhelming, just stay with one thing and do it every single day. You don't have to go live every day, but you need to post something every day to get that engagement up. So that's the second thing to do. The third thing I really want you to do is do some work, any work on your money mindset, because that is actually what's had the biggest impact on my life so far. I did not realize at all how many limiting beliefs and I'm not spiritual in any way. I'm not of the woo, kind. I'm woo adjacent, very woo adjacent. A lot of my clients are woo. I'm just not. And so with me, I think it's really important that you recognize that you will have some stories that you are telling yourself that are actually getting in your own way. And when people used to say that to me, I'd be like, nah, I've always wanted to be a millionaire. And then when I actually wrote down like my story, it was so obvious where these things were coming from. Like when I was younger, if people came past in a really posh car, no one would go, oh, wow, look at that amazing person in a posh car. They would do the opposite of that. It would be very much frowned upon that this person was showing off because they had something nice. And so in my head, I equated rich people as bad people. And as soon as I did that, there was no way I was ever going to make money. Because
media does this, by the way. I see this.
Yeah, doesn't it?
And move it, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So subconsciously, did I want to be a bad person? No, therefore I'm not going to make any money. I didn't even know this was happening to me. But it was only when I started realizing these things that within like a 2 or 3 week period, everything changed around. And I started making money, and I realized the patterns that I was doing my whole life were just self-sabotaging. So if you want to start on money mindset work and you've not done anything before, go and read Denise Duffield Thomas's Get Rich Lucky Bitch or Jen Sincero's You Are a Badass at Making Money. Both books are amazing and will have you thinking very differently, and you'll be very surprised at what starts happening.
I love that so much. Well, you have had a tremendous amount of financial success in 2020. So I want to say congratulations to you. And before we jump off, Lisa, I have one last question for you. The mission of the Free Mama is to make sure that no mother should have to choose between family and financial stability. So knowing that and everything we've talked about today, is there one final piece of advice you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, the only thing that's going to make you have the extraordinary life that you deserve, which is to never have to choose between family and income, is for you to decide that whatever it takes, you're going to make it non-negotiable. There will be obstacles in your path. You will want to give up. Business is bloody hard, especially in the first couple of years. But when it gets to the point where you want to give up, remember the goal. Just remember the goal that one day you're going to be able to spend time with your kids and you are going to be able to have as much money as you want and keep going. It's really about that. There's only 5% of people who start new businesses that keep going. They're the 5% that make it. They're the successful ones. Be the 5%.
Oh, I love that. Be the 5%. You guys, we'll tell you how you can connect with Lisa as well as download her 6 months of Facebook Live prompts over on Free Mama Radio. So make sure you guys go check that out. Support Lisa, follow her on social media, get in her Facebook group, whatever you have to do to be around this woman. Every time she talks, I'm just so impressed. And I know you guys can learn a ton from her as well. Lisa, thank you for being on Free Mama Radio. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been really fun chatting to you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Free Mama Radio. Don't forget to check out Free Mama TV right here on YouTube for hundreds of how-to videos and interviews to help you start, grow, and scale a virtual business from home. If you want to join a community of tens of thousands of moms just like you, make sure you join the Free Mama Movement group over on Facebook. And lastly, if you want to learn more about how we can do this together, work to achieve your goals, and make you our next success story, check out my free training at thefreemamamovement.com. I'll see you next time.